instead of turning in all the signatures at the end of a petition, a group filing a petition would need to turn in those signatures on a monthly basis. The reason that we want to do this is we believe that would create a more transparent process where people could see exactly how many signatures are being filed every month by people gathering these signatures for a petition. I think that makes the process more transparent, better for the public to understand. It would prevent prevent initiatives from being bad actors and not disclosing a correct amount of signatures that they are collecting. Second thing that it does is it creates a review period at the end of the process for 2 months. And we borrowed this same idea from the state of Utah. Actually does this, where for 2 months there's an opportunity for people to remove their signature from a petition. Say they signed something not fully understanding exactly what they were signing, and they've changed their mind, or they signed it based on one part of the petition without realizing that there was a second part of the petition. This would give them the opportunity to remove their signature from the petition. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Petsky. Are there questions for Representative Petsky? Representative Allgood.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm getting a lot of email from constituents that are concerned we're somehow restricting the petition process. Is anything in this bill more restrictive than previous legislation?
Representative Petsky.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Representative. Great question. I've had a lot of people reach out to me with some of those concerns as well. My personal take on it is I do not believe that this makes it any more restrictive to get an initiative passed. Obviously, you do have to turn in those signatures monthly. I think they're arguing that would be a burden on them. Personally, I don't think so. We have to turn in our campaign finance reports every month. There's lots of things in government that you have to do on a monthly basis. I think that's a very fair standard to place. I think if we were setting up this process from scratch right now, that's probably what we would do. If we were, setting it up from scratch, because it just makes some good sense. I really don't. The timeline's changing here a little bit because of that review period. I think that's the one thing where people think that it will make the initiative process harder. Again, I don't think so. Like I said, we borrowed a lot of this from what Utah does, and Utah's had successful petitions go forward under the same process. So I don't think that it restricts in any way the ability of these groups to get these petitions on the ballot. It does just make the process more transparent for people and provides the option for people who signed a petition and change their mind to take their signature off. Follow up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none. Representative Vanderwater, I see your name on here. Did you want to testify or? Oh, okay, good. We're going to move to in-person testimony. First up will be Kendall Shaber, followed by Mary Ruck, followed by Georgia Boatman.
Well, let's see if they listen.
Kendall, state your name, who you represent. You have 2 minutes today for public testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Crane and members of the committee. My name is Kendall Shaber, and I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Idaho and its statewide membership. The League of Women Voters opposes H652. For over 100 years, the League's nonpartisan mission has been to facilitate informed citizen participation in government. That participation is integral to our democratic republic. H652 is another attempt and an ongoing effort to deny Idahoans their constitutionally protected role in bringing public matters before the voters of Idaho. The current stringent rules for qualifying an initiative mean that few make the ballot. Reducing the period to collect signatures by 1 month, having an extra burden, especially for rural volunteers, of monthly signature submissions in a 60-day review period will have a detrimental impact on people's right granted by the Idaho Constitution. At this point, thousands of Idahoans across the political spectrum have participated in this popular process. Instead of feeling threatened by public participation, the legislature would do well to support the will of the people and stop trying to short-circuit the initiative process. This bill is a bad idea, and its message is bad politics. Please send H652 back to its sponsor. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Kendall. Are there questions for Kendall? Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Schaefer, today you're standing in a committee, participating in a public process, voicing your opinion about an issue. Mm-hmm. There are many bills that get introduced in this building that never make it to a vote on the floor because it's a rigorous process. So I'm just curious to know, it seems like you think it should be easy to put every matter before the voters, and yet I see in our representative process a built-in system of checks and balances that necessarily weeds out some ideas. Could you help me reconcile that with your testimony?
Chairman Crane and Representative Young, we think the process is sufficiently stringent now. It is not easy. As somebody who's participated personally in this process, it is not easy at all. And I think when we look at some of the impediments put up by this particular bill, signature gathering, I'll just take one example. We have thousands of volunteers around the state that are collecting signatures, and they're not being paid to do that. They don't get gas money. There are very remote areas in this state, and these people collect signatures. If they had to go to their county seat, which could be hours away from where they live, every single month to turn in signatures, that's an undue burden on rural volunteers in particular. So I don't think, and none of the Desert League think that this process should be easy. It's not easy. It's hard. So maybe that is an answer to your question, I hope. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony today. Next up will be Mary Ruck, followed by Georgia Boatman, followed by Tracy Olson. Mary, in person, going once, going twice, gone. Georgia Boatman.
Yeah, Mr. Crane, you don't want anybody to testify
Mr.
against this bill,
Chairman,
do you?
members of the committee, my name is Georgia Boatman. I'm a taxpayer in Southwest Boise, and I'm testifying for myself. I'm an Idahoan born and raised from a pioneer family. I'm here to urge you to vote against HB 652. It should not make its way out of this committee. Idaho Constitution, Article 3, Section 1. The people reserve to themselves the power to propose laws and enact the same at the polls, independent of the legislature. This power is known as the initiative. Petitioning to get an initiative on the ballot is one of the few ways Idaho citizens can actively participate in government. The current initiative process exerts a significant burden on citizens who wish to engage in active participation. HB 652 requires petitioners to submit signatures monthly, while at the same time shortening the time allotted to collect those signatures. These two additions to an already challenging initiative process are an unfair burden on citizens. HB 652 will advantage professional signature collectors from out-of-state interests over concerned citizens. And it will essentially hamstring the average Idaho citizen's ability to work on signature collection for proposed initiatives. To me, it seems as if some are afraid that their actions and legislation would not pass muster if subjected to potential citizen initiatives. The appropriate response when constituents do not like the direction government action is going is to listen and respond thoughtfully and positively. It is not to throw even more roadblocks in the way of their participation. HB 652 seeks to take away the power guaranteed to Idaho citizens to engage in the initiative process. Please vote against this flawed and undemocratic bill. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Georgia. Are there questions for Georgia? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Yeah.
Next up is Tracy Olson.
Good morning, I'm Tracy Olson. I represent myself. I live in Boise, Idaho. And this is my third time showing up to this committee, so I appreciate you hearing this today. I'm here to testify against HB 652 because this issue is really personal to me. It is no secret that I'm a supporter of ballot initiatives. I volunteered for 3 different ones, starting with Medicaid expansion. The basic tenet to ballot initiatives in Idaho is that they are citizen-led, volunteer-driven, and I support 100%. And I also believe that this process should not be overburdensome for volunteers, a sentiment that's clearly not agreed upon by everyone. It already takes a monumentous effort to collect the volume of signatures required. The monthly turn-in provision takes that effort and multiplies it exponentially, while shortening the time to collect signatures by a month. This arbitrary deadline will result in signatures being disqualified without the signer knowing it, just disenfranchising thousands of petitioner signers, and I don't know how that in itself could be acceptable. I recognize the level of work that county clerks must do to validate signatures, and I have a tremendous respect for them. Yet I struggle to understand why the blame for the volume of work, which by the way is due to the requirements encoded in law by the legislature, and the so-called fix is solely put on volunteers. There are things that could be done if stakeholders are consulted and can collaborate on solutions, and I suggest we try that, and I'm willing to come to the table if people want to ask. The provision in this bill that is especially troublesome to me is the one that allows people to remove their signature without requiring them to jump through any hoops at all to verify their identity. Petitions need to be notarized and verified. This bill states a person, quote, must provide sufficient information to clearly identify the signer. This is vague and inadequately protects those who have signed. It opens the door for bad actors to manipulate the process. And we all know folks are out there who do that. There's no remedy mentioned in the bill that allows a signature to be reinstated if removed in error or by false means, and nor is there a penalty or a fine for a person who assumes a faked identity to have a signature removed. This also adds another layer of tasks for the county clerks, which doesn't align with the supposed purpose of the bill to decrease the administrative burden. I believe our initiative rights are sacred and need protection, and I don't feel this bill does that, so I urge you to vote no.
Thank you, Tracy. Are there questions for Tracy? Representative Allgood.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Would you just help me understand the process? I've heard testimony a couple of times about shortening the length of time by 30 days. But it says in the bill, from the time the petition is given its SOP, and it's got a full 18 months, and that's not new language. It seems to me it's still 18 months. Am I reading that wrong?
Tracy?
Yeah, Chairman, Representative Allgood, thank you. The way I read it, so maybe I'm reading it wrong, is that you have a 30-day window to turn in the signatures. There's a deadline. And so it ends up being, if let's say the deadline is April 30th and a signature is collected in March, it has to be turned in by a certain point of time. So and maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I think it does shorten it, but the bill sponsor could probably answer that better.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the bill
Okay,
sponsor when he's up.
sounds good. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Olson. Just curious about your comments about people needing to verify their identity before removing their signature. This section of code in front of us doesn't include any language that requires any kind of ID in order to sign a petition. In the petition gathering process, since you've participated several times now, do you require people to provide any kind of ID prior to signing a petition?
Tracy?
Thank you, Chairman Crane and Representative Young. Signatures have to be verified. In order to be verified, they have to be registered voters. So when they're registered to vote, they have to provide that ID.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Olson. So I just would like to understand, when you're out there gathering signatures, do people provide ID to you prior to signing the petition, or is that all done by the county clerk?
The county clerk has to verify the signatures, that they are valid.
Any further questions? Representative Keelys.
I just maybe clarify a point for Representative Young, and Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone who's gathering signatures signs an affidavit on that those signatures are true and valid before they go to the county clerk. So there is a level of verification that happens there by the signature gatherer.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Tracy, thank you so much. That
Thank you.
completes all of our in-person testimony. I think we've got 4 folks signed up to virtually testify, so we're going to pick those up real quick. First up will be Norma Staff, followed by Heather Stout, followed by Karen Hansen, and Julie, you'll round out the batting order there. So Norma, you're up first. Hello, Norma. Welcome to House State Affairs.
Thank you, Chairman Crane. Chairman Crane, members of the committee, my name is Norma Staff. I live in Idaho County, one of those rural areas mentioned earlier, in District 7. I oppose 652, and I urge you to vote no. In answer to the question about this bill shortening the timeline, page 1, line 17, signatures would be due on March 31st instead of the current April 30th, which is shortening it by 30 days. My biggest concern with the bill is the language about the removal of signatures during the review period. On page 2, lines 8 to 12. It makes it ripe for fraud and for bad actors. To initially sign the petition, the voter must sign in the presence of the signature gatherer. The volunteer attests in front of the notary that they observed the signature and the county official's signature match with voter records. But in order to remove a signature, an email would be sufficient. No signature match, and it makes no sense that a voter can't sign a petition electronically, but a signature can be removed from the petition by an email from an unverified source. Bad actors could have enough information about the signer to fake an email without the knowledge of a petition signer. People who signed in good faith would be harmed. Once the list is public, opponents of the petition may pressure and harass people to remove their names. We saw an inkling of this last summer in Idaho County. After a photo of the open primaries kickoff event was posted, one of the volunteers was targeted by members of his own political party's central committee. If people learn they may be bullied for signing a petition or collecting signatures, they may be reluctant to sign.
Norma, your time's expired. I'll need you to wrap it up.
Protect our constitutional rights.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there questions for Norma? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next up will be Heather Stout, followed by Karen Hansen.
Okay, where's my, I'm here.
We can hear you, Heather. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't know why my video isn't working.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Video working. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for taking remote testimony. My name is Heather Stout. I live just north of Genesee, Idaho, in a remote part of Latah County. I am testifying today to strongly urge you to table HB 652. Our citizen initiative process does not need to be amended, and the restrictions put forth in this bill are unconstitutional. Committee members, I'm tired of revisiting this issue every legislative session. Citizen initiatives allow the citizens of Idaho to bring issues that they feel need to be addressed directly to the voters. Improved education funding and expanding Medicaid was the work of thousands of citizen volunteers collecting signatures all over the state. We should applaud their efforts, not restrict them. This proposed legislation creates a monthly deadline for turning in signatures. Why? It serves no purpose besides disenfranchising thousands of petition signers. It does not streamline the process. It is not more transparent. It just makes citizens jump through more hoops. In addition, reducing the time period available to collect signatures from 18 months to 17 months serves no other purpose than to make it more difficult for the people of Idaho to participate in their government. I ask you to respect the citizens of Idaho and table HB 652. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Are there questions for Heather? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next up is Karen Hansen. Karen, go ahead.
Yes, I am Karen Hansen. Hansen from Viola, Idaho, representing myself. Please vote against House Bill 652. The current petition signature gathering process is simple, clear, and carefully controlled. There is no justification whatsoever for the added complications that this bill puts forth. There is already strong motivation for signature gatherers to turn in filled, notarized signatures promptly in order to get verified signature totals on an ongoing basis. It is wrong and a sign of bad faith to change the rules in the middle of the petition process. This bill is just the last in a long line of bills proposed by the legislature that interfere with the ability of Idaho voters to exercise their constitutional right to place an initiative on the ballot. It is unacceptable for the Idaho legislature to continually try to silence the voice of the Idaho people. I'm not seeing much interest in addressing the real needs and desires of the majority of Idaho citizens. Idaho citizens want their voices heard by the legislature, not silenced by the legislature. Your votes on bills such as this that interfere with the already very difficult initiative petition process will be remembered by Idaho voters. And regarding petition signers removing their petition, well, this just gets the initiative on the ballot. Anybody who has questions after they sign it can just vote against the initiative when it comes before the people. So I think that's kind of a moot point. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Are there questions for Karen? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next up will be Julie. She'll be our final person to testify unless there's someone in the audience who would like to testify on House Bill 652.
You think they're listening to the testifiers?
Hello, Julie. Welcome to House State Affairs.
Good morning, Chairman Crane and the committee. My name is Julie Celeberti from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I am testifying on behalf of myself against H 652. The proposed changes to the initiative signature gathering in the form of decreasing the amount of months to gather from 18 to 17, as well as the monthly turn-in deadlines, pose a prohibitive burden to the hundreds of citizen volunteers collecting signatures. It is every citizen's constitutional right to advocate for themselves in the form of initiatives. This legislation disenfranchises Idahoans, especially rural Idahoans, with the restrictions from the ability to effectively engage in this activity. Some of the stated rationale for this legislation has been that the state has grown in population, and therefore the validation and processing of petitions is too much of a burden on the Secretary of State's office, as well as local election clerks. And this is concerning. With growth, one would expect that added support to these offices on the state as well as the local level would be in order so that constitutionally guaranteed due process could be supported. If this was done, then the proven initiative process could stand intact. The changes in the gathering does not in any way make this more transparent. Lastly, the process for removing one signature from a petition is not at all secure. Unlike the collecting and validating process, which is quite secure and has several levels, including notarizing as well as at the elections office. There are no fraud safeguards against forgeries, and this is extremely concerning. I respectfully ask that you vote against table H 652.
Thank you, Julie. Are there questions for Julie? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Young has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Celeberti? I don't know if I said that right, but just wondering, I'm assuming you also have collected signatures on petitions, and you gather those signatures and then you sign an affidavit before the county clerk certifying that these are all registered voters. Is that correct?
Julie?
We gather the signatures and we witness each signature. Then we attest to that and in having each petition separately notarized. When I bring the petitions to the elections office, They look at each one, notarize it, sign it in. And then the elections, the county clerk goes into the system and validates each signature. They validate that the signature matches, they validate that they are indeed registered, and they validate that they are registered at the correct address. All of these things, they do this one by one for every of the 12 signatures on each page. I've been very involved intimately with this process with our elections office here in Kootenai County. If they are not valid, they put a code next to it just to let us know why and themselves to make a note. And they return the petition with a validation sheet attached to the front, which gives us the number of signatures that are valid for each district on that petition. And that is the way the petition with that certified stamped validation sheet, every petition, that's how they are then returned to the Secretary of State. Does that answer your question?
She's got a follow-up question for you, Julie.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. So I'm just curious to know, it sounds to me like when you certify or sign your affidavit before the county clerk, you're certifying that you saw the person physically sign the paper. You're not certifying that you know that the person is a registered voter. Is that correct?
Julie?
Correct. That is the job, the way the process is described to me. That is the job of the county clerk.
She knew the
then
answer.
Goes and makes sure that the signatures match, and they are very thorough. And if there's anything that is not that doesn't match, they disallow the signature.
Any further questions for
Did they make any
Julie?
difference?
Seeing none, thank you. That completes our remote testimony today, as well as our in-person testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to testify on House Bill 652?
Mr. Chairman, I did sign up. I got the email, but apparently I didn't make the list.
You're not on the list, but you know what? We have the ability to add you to the list, so we'll get that done. Go ahead.
My name is Steve Bender. I am representing only myself, no party. I am in favor of this bill. I've heard a lot of people today talk about several things that upset me. It does not shorten the period, really, for collecting signatures. It lengthens the period for verifying these signatures. If I do my books for the state party once a year, I've got a huge job and I can't get it done in time. So I do things on a weekly or more
But you don't have 2,000 volunteers
when
now, do
these
you,
people
sir?
come in and drop thousands of pages on these clerks at the last minute, there's not always time to verify. This 30-day rule is designed to lower the workload and make it an ongoing process. It's a great idea. My other problem with the whole initiative process is that, no, you don't have to verify when you're collecting a signature. That gets done later.
Yeah, by a county clerk.
We're currently seeing signatures for the ranked choice voting and jungle primary initiative that's being categorized as open primaries. The Republican Party closed its primaries several years ago. You have to be a member of the party to vote. I'd see nothing wrong with that. Under this new initiative,
275,000 people
can actually put
can't vote
a
in the
party
primary.
designator after their name, even if they're not a member of the
Mr.
party.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So just a point here, we're talking about the initiative process, we're not talking about initiatives specifically, and I think we should focus our comments on the initiative process, not specific initiatives.
I appreciate that, Representative Keeley's. I let your colleague go quite a bit far afield dealing with faith healing, which had nothing to do with House Bill 666 as well earlier. I do allow a lot of leeway in here, and so I'm going to override you and allow him to go ahead and continue. But thank you for raising the objection.
My point was that this particular initiative is being advertised as something different than what it actually does. I've talked to many people who signed it thinking it was a good thing, and once they understand what it fully does, they
after
want
it's
to remove
explained
their
by the
signature. I'm
oligarchs,
talking dozens of people I personally
Vandersloot.
talked to, and many others who have done the same thing. We do need a methodology for removing signatures, and this puts that in there. It makes it easier for the clerks to stay up to speed on getting everything verified. It creates this public comment period. This is an excellent improvement on the initiative process.
Vandersloot
And I would also
paying
remind
your way
everybody, we
to
are a
Boise to
representative government,
testify?
not a democracy. That means you are
oligarch and-
representatives, and the initiative process bypasses that. so that the citizens can bypass the legislature. And
Mr. Bender, your time's ran out. You'll need to wrap it up.
the same problem exists with the initiative process. It's not always straight and above board, and this helps counter some
Well,
of
that's
those
why it's in
problems.
the Idaho
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Are there
Constitution
questions for
that
Mr.
allows it, because we
Seeing
don't,
none, thank you for your testimony
it's
today.
obvious,
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify on
the,
House Bill 652?
legislature
Seeing none, would Representative Vanderwater or Petsky like to
doesn't listen
close?
to people. Like this one, like the
Thank you, Chairman.
supermajority.
I'll just close real briefly, just to touch on a few of the things that were mentioned. For one thing, there's a lot of discussion about the security of removing signatures versus the security of signing the initiatives in the first place. They're very similar. And that's, I think, a good point. I think Representative Young, you were asking questions to that effect, and you're 100% correct. And I'd also add that
The county clerk is the
process
one that
to
removes
remove
the name.
signatures is already in existing code. We didn't change that process. The person that testified regarding emails.
She verifies the voter
emails in existing
registration
code,
signature.
That's not a part of this. This just
same one
opens
that's
up
used at the
window for
polls.
the time to remove signatures to be longer than it currently is.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the question of shortening the length of petitions, if you look in the way this is written, all we're doing is removing the date that they're due from April 30th to March 31st. The idea there
Yeah, making
is
it
that
harder,
we're trying to
right?
avoid the same
These are all
time window
unpaid
as the
people.
main election primaries for our clerks. That was actually one of the considerations that they brought up. when we
Reclaim
talked
Idaho
with
does a
them-
great job.
with them about this bill, because during that particular time, the end of April, beginning of May, obviously they're dealing with primary elections, and so it's a really busy time. But you'll notice
Sir,
that it still
you're
says that
against the
extended
citizens
18
initiative
months
process.
from that date. So
In
they still
fact,
have a maximum of 18 months to do the signature gathering. It does not shorten the window for them to gather. It
Eight-year
just
term
changes
limits was
when that
passed by
final date is
Citizens
that they have to
Initiative
turn
in
them in.
1995, and the
And I
Republican-controlled
also like to
conservative
mention, the points that
legislators
were just
repealed
brought up,
it
I
in
actually,
2002,
Representative Keeley's was
which
kind of
allows
actually getting
Mr.
on something important here.
Crane
This does not affect the current
to
initiative. I
stay
talked
in
about that
office
with
for
Secretary of
16
State.
years, and Mr. Boyle
This
stays
will
in the
not affect
same
current
legislative
initiative. It's too late
seat
at
for
this point to do anything
26
about that one, because
years.
it's obviously already well down the line. It's going to go.
Don't
if
want
it does
those
get on the
8-year
ballot,
term
it'll be
limits now,
certified
do
on the
we,
ballot
sir?
Before the July
And we don't
1st
want
deadline. So
another
this does
citizens
not address the
initiative
current
to bring
petition.
back term
What we're
limits
trying
now,
to do
do we,
is set a
sir?
better system going forward that is more transparent and works
More
better,
transparent
for
baloney.
Idahoans going forward. And then, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to close by adding that we've heard a lot of testimony today that this will make the initiative process harder, or that this is unconstitutional because it will make the initiative process harder. I couldn't disagree more. I would
yeah,
not have
you
brought this
would.
bill if I thought that this was unconstitutional or that it would make this process completely impossible to do. I'd add that you might remember last year House Joint Memorial or Senate Joint Resolution 101. I believe did go too far, and that's why I voted against it on the floor. Just as an example, I'm not against initiatives. I just want to make sure that we have a better process in place going forward so that we can have a more transparent process for the people of Idaho.
Thank you, Representative Petsky. Are there questions? Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pesky, I've listened to all the testimony, and I have not heard anyone complain about the present process as far as removing names, or that someone was unable to remove a name, or had a problem with the system that exists today. Do you have anyone who is in that situation that I just described?
Representative Petsky.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. That is not something that we're changing in this bill. Like I said, the process for removing signatures already exists, is already in current code. We're not changing it. We're just adding an additional window of when people can do that.
Yeah, shorten it, make it harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Pesky. Well, what I'm thinking is if there are no problems with the present system, first. Second, there's been apparently nobody who has been charged with having a false signature, then why are we even making these changes in the law? It seems like it's working, so why are we doing this?
Representative Petsky.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I believe that I already covered that, and that we're making the process more transparent, and we're providing an option for people who do decide after the initiative's already on the ballot that they want to remove their signature. Those are the two reasons why.
Yeah, after you lie to them, eh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They're not gonna do
Representative Pesky, not after the initiative's on the ballot. Once it's on the ballot.
Or excuse me.
Yes. Yeah.
Chairman.
Would you like to clarify, Representative Petsky?
Yes, sorry, to clarify that, we're adding this review period to the process. So there's the option for somebody who Once the signatures have been turned in and certified by the clerks, it then goes to the Secretary of State, and then there's a 60-day window which somebody can remove their signature.
Any further questions for Representative Petsky?
There's 105,000
Seeing none,
signatures. How
House
many
Bill
people?
652 is properly before the
do
committee. Representative Gannon.
Well, I don't have a motion. I was going to speak in opposition to the motion, so I'll wait.
We don't have a motion yet, but you're welcome to speak in opposition of the potential motion.
I will make a motion to hold.
Well, what if we put the motion to hold it in committee? Then what are you going to do?
I will make a
Okay,
motion to.
all right, go ahead, Representative Gannon.
I will make a motion to hold this in the committee, and the reason is there is no problem. I haven't heard a single incident of a problem that anyone's had removing their signature. I haven't heard a single complaint about the present system from anyone who participates. I haven't heard that anybody's been charged with fraud. I haven't heard from the Secretary of State that they're having any problem in their office. There's not been a single witness who says, "Oh, we've got to make these changes so urgent." We haven't heard from a county clerk who wants this. So I think that this is not something that's necessary, and it's something, and that we just ought to move on until somebody comes here and says, "Hey, I got a complaint. This is what happened. Let's make a change."
Committee, we have a motion to hold House Bill 652 in committee. Is there discussion on that motion? Representative Andrus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a substitute motion that we send House Bill 652 to the floor with the due pass recommendation.
Committee, we have a substitute motion to send House Bill 652 to the floor with the due pass recommendation. Is there discussion on that motion? Representative Keelys.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a couple comments on the substitute motion, and I've been talking with Representative Petsky about this, but I think there are four significant issues with this bill. And just for clarity's sake, I've gathered signatures working on a petition. I've also worked a number of elections as a precinct judge. Elections are sacred things. We do them very well in Idaho, and we have to, anytime we make a process change in how we conduct our elections or the process leading up to elections, I think we need to be very deliberate and very thoughtful about this. So first, this new 60-day review period for the Secretary of State, that breaks a couple of statutes that are already on the books. It violates 34-1812A, which is when arguments need to be submitted. It violates 34-1812B, which is when the rebuttal is submitted, because those dates fall within that 60-day review period. It also shrinks the time to complete 34-1812C, which is the printing of the pamphlets, by 82%. So you go from 55 days down to 10 days. And this likely, I don't know if it breaks, but it certainly puts a lot of pressure on compliance with the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, or UCOVA. And this impacts all Idahoans living overseas or serving in the military. And somebody who, my tank battalion was deployed on the Iraqi Kuwaiti border back in the day, and I missed a federal election. I want to make sure that nobody else has to go through that either. So second, we're significantly increasing the clerk's work. Both this monthly deadline, as well as now we're going from 60 days for the clerks to certify the signatures to 90 days. And I feel that's, it feels like an unnecessary belt and suspenders. If you're requiring sort of signature process ongoing throughout the 18-month, then you really don't need that 90 days. In fact, it could probably just be 30 days. So I think that's a bit overkill on that. And then this new 60-day period for the Secretary of State, there's no criteria on how this is conducted. I mean, where's this going to be held? What are we going to do? Like lay all the signature sheets out on the blue field and have people kind of wander around and cross out their signature? Who has access to this? What are the evaluative criteria? What do you need to show up with to be able to take your signature off of the list, the consolidated Secretary of State list? So that's the third one. And then the fourth one, I am concerned, again, that this 60-day window just breaks a lot of process within Title 34, Chapter 18 going forward. And I appreciate Representative Petsky saying this, this wouldn't apply this year. But I think that window, again, the Secretary of State has 120 days. And now we're shrinking that to 60 days to certify ahead of the November election. And I just want to make sure that we do that in a way where, we're making the initiative process better rather than trying to cram things down and risk breaking something. So Can we do initiatives better in the state? Absolutely. You know, I've been out there. It's a lot of work. We have an incredibly high bar in Idaho. I think I would agree with most of the testimony here that we really don't have a problem, but I'm willing to work with Representative Petsky on this, on how can we make this process better. And finally, last point, I managed to go through all of the letters that were submitted to the secretary here. Not one, 197 were against 652. Not one was in favor. In fact, I think of the testimony today, the only person that was in favor of 652 was Mr. Bender. So clearly the people of Idaho aren't particularly excited about 652 either. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Keelys. Are there further discussion on the motion? We've got a substitute motion to send House Bill 652 to the floor with the due pass recommendation. Seeing none, the motion is to send House Bill 652 to the floor with the due pass recommendation. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. It will be done. Would you like